This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary.
Good morning, members. Please be seated. Before we proceed with today's business, I wish to advise the Assembly that the Speaker has received correspondence from Mr Roy Beggs advising of his resignation as Deputy Speaker with effect from the 1st of June 2022. I think the House would join with me in placing on record our appreciation for the service of Mr Beggs in that position. I also wish to clarify a number of matters in respect of today's sitting. Members, you will be aware that initially the Speaker summoned the Assembly to meet on the 26th of July in the Senate chamber to discuss today's business, but he subsequently postponed the sitting to allow arrangements to be made to pay our tributes to Lord Trimble of Lisnagarvey in the Assembly chamber yesterday. As a result, we are able to hold today's proceedings in the chamber. I wish to remind members that standing orders make temporary provision for proxy voting arrangements and hybrid proceedings until the end of July 22. As a result, proxy voting arrangements and remote participation are not in place either today or future sittings unless otherwise agreed by the Assembly at a later date. If that is clear, let us move on. Point of order.
Arising from your announcement of the resignation, Mr Roy Beggs, and I salute his service to the House, could I ask you, has any other member who was not returned as a member of this House resigned from offices which they continue to hold, for example, on the Commission? And if they do continue to hold those offices, are they continuing to be paid?
Members, as Acting Speaker, my responsibility is limited to overseeing the election of a Speaker today. Points of order in relation to any other matters should be raised with the Speaker through the Speaker's office. Thank you. Been given notice by not less than 30 members under Standing Order 11. The Speaker has summoned the Assembly to meet today for the purpose of conducting the items of business that appear on the order paper. The first items of business is the election of the Speaker and Deputy Speakers. Section 39(1) of the Northern Ireland Act provides that each Assembly shall, as its first business, elect from among its members a presiding officer and deputies. Therefore, the Assembly cannot conduct any further business until a Speaker and at least 2 Deputy Speakers have been elected. Members should be clear. Without the election of a Speaker and 2 Deputies, no further business can proceed. I wish to advise members that the election of the Speaker will be conducted under the procedures set out in Standing Order 4. Further to Standing Order 4.8, I am the Acting Speaker today for the purpose of electing a Speaker. I will begin by asking for nominations. Any member may rise to propose that another member is elected as Speaker. I will then ask for the proposal to be seconded by another member as required by Standing Order 14. I will then verify that the member seconded is willing to accept the nomination. I will then ask for further proposals and follow the same procedure for each. When it appears that there are no further proposals, I will make it clear that the time for proposals has passed. If members indicate that they wish to speak, A debate relevant to the election may then take place, during which members will have up to 5 minutes to speak. At the conclusion of the debate or the conclusion of the nominations, if there are no requests to speak, I shall put the question that the member first proposed shall be Speaker of this Assembly. The vote will be on a cross-community basis. If the proposal is not carried, I shall put the question in relation to the next nominee, and so on until all nominations are exhausted. Once the Speaker is elected, all other nominations will fall automatically. Do I have proposals for the office of Speaker of the Assembly? Mr. Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to nominate the member for Strangford, Maggie Nesbitt, MLA.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that nomination?
Mr. Speaker, I second that.
Does Mr. Nesbitt accept the nomination?
I do.
Thank you. Do we have any other proposals? Mr. O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I'd like to nominate Mr. Patsy McGloon, MLA, for the post of Speaker.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for Mr. McGlone?
I would like to second that, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. McGlone, do you accept the nomination?
Glacam Leish, John Corlia, I accept.
Are there any other proposals? Okay, the time for proposals has expired. Now, a number of members have indicated that they wish to speak. I would remind members that they may speak only once in the course of the debate. Members have up to 5 minutes on which to speak. And I call Michelle O'Neill. Thank you.
Today marks 90 days since the Assembly election was held, where the public voted for change and gave all of the parties represented in this chamber a mandate to form a government and to set a budget to give workers and families a break. The DUP, through their continued boycott of these institutions and their failure to accept the democratic outcome of the election, are denying the public the representation to which they are entitled and they deserve. It's wholly unacceptable, it's untenable, and it cannot continue. The Good Friday Agreement is the governing constitutional framework in which this part of the world operates. It's the rulebook, if you like. It must therefore be fully applied and upheld. This is a test of power sharing and equality for the DUP. The majority of newly elected MLAs and Assembly parties want to come together. They want to make politics work so that we can deliver for all of the people right across the community. We need to elect a Speaker and restore the Assembly. We need to form a government, and we need to set a budget to deliver public services. We need to provide financial supports to households and fund our health service, and to cut waiting lists, which at this moment in time are leaving tens of thousands of people crippled in pain as they await treatment and surgery. These essential public services are being constantly undermined by and severely hampered because of the actions of the DUP. I listened to Jeffrey Donaldson on the radio this morning, who talked about how things are all fine and dandy, everything's great in departments, they have budgets in which to do the business. That is not true. The fact is that budgets are becoming increasingly untenable. Departments are facing increasing financial pressure in delivering public services as a result of the significant rise in energy costs, coupled with the need to respond to the cost of living crisis that are facing households and businesses. The DUP are the only party that are blocking and preventing the executive being formed, preventing the executive meeting that would allow us to distribute money to help workers and families. So let me say to you, even at this late hour today, workers need help, families need help, businesses need help, and you're continuing to punish the public that we are elected to serve by your continued refusal to govern with the rest of us. And all of your actions will not wash away the protocol. The British Government legislating to denounce the protocol will not wash away the international rule of law. The reckless approach of the DUP and by the Tories in London is all about themselves and themselves only, their own selfish interests, and to hell with the ordinary people, to hell with the people who are actually struggling to actually put a roof over their heads, to keep a roof over their heads, to actually heat their homes and the pressures which they're facing in their everyday life. But you don't appear to care. And I would encourage you to care. I would encourage you to join the rest of us and actually form a government, because your actions and the actions of the Tory government are damaging. They're damaging to ordinary people. They're damaging to politics, and they're damaging to our economy. I think it's unforgivable. I think most people would think that it's unforgivable, that as people are suffering right now from all these rises in the cost of living, that they're worried about the months ahead. They're particularly worried about the winter months and as we move through the autumn. And they're worried because they don't know how they're going to get through this period. But I'm quite sure there's plenty of people on your benches that aren't worried about being able to put food on your table over the autumn and the winter. These are your constituents. These are all of our constituents. And we need to work together to do what we need to do to support them at this time. People want us to fix our health service. People want us to work together to fix our health service. We've said that we would invest an extra £1 billion over the next 3 years to reduce waiting lists and to start to fix our health service, because we want to be in the executive now. We want to deliver for people now. We stand ready to form an executive now. We want to be working together with all of you, everybody in this chamber. We want to work together to put money in people's pockets now, because that's what they need from us. Under the new legislation that extends the period to 24 weeks for appointing a First and Deputy First Minister, it should be noted here that today that unless these nominations are fulfilled in 14 short weeks' time, the British Secretary of State is required to call a second election. And a winter election during a cost of living crisis, whenever people can't heat their homes, is not what people want. It's really not what people want. They want you to do your jobs like they're doing theirs. They want parties to work together to form an executive. They want us to be accountable to them. They need our help. Families need our help. So I'm saying again today to those parties, to the DUP, who are continuing to block an executive being formed, join with the rest of us, work with the rest of us, help deliver for people. Let's get people through the cost of living crisis in the best way that we can. Stop denying people the change that they voted for and discharge your political responsibilities. Because I genuinely believe that working together, we can make a real difference for people. So, Mr Acting Speaker, I stand ready to jointly work with others to lead an executive in order to help to make politics work for everyone and actually demonstrate that real change is possible and to help people get through what is going to be excruciating time in the winter months ahead.
Mr Acting Speaker, I wish to commence by expressing our deepest sympathy to the family and friends of our dear colleague Councillor John Finlay, who sadly passed away on Monday morning and whose funeral takes place this afternoon. John was a man of great faith, and whilst our hearts are heavy today, we know that he faced death with great hope in his Saviour, and that is of great comfort to us. Turning now to the matter before us and the recall of this Assembly due to a petition signed by pro-protocol parties, we do have to say that this is stunt politics. These proceedings are not a genuine attempt by the parties opposite to restore the political institutions. Rather, they demonstrate a wilful disregard for the views of unionists and the principle of power sharing itself in Northern Ireland. It is astonishing that when one hears the parties opposite falsely claim that the Belfast and St Andrews agreements provide grounds for an Irish Sea border, yet they now want to do away with cross-community consent, which is fundamental to those agreements. Let's be clear, the Northern Ireland Protocol has caused a deep fracture in our politics. That fracture will continue to grow unless it is dealt with now, and is dealt with through arrangements that command cross-community consent. It is impacting negatively on our supply chains, on our constitutional positions, and on the cost of living. The DUP is a pro-devolution party. We want to see stability and sustainability in our political institutions. That is what we are working hard to deliver, in keeping with the consent principle enshrined in the Belfast and St Andrews agreements. The coalition of chaos in front of us insisted on the protocol across from us, without local consent. They pressed for its rigorous implementation, and for the past 2 years they have insulted the unionist community and others who hold genuine concerns about its impact. Our party leader warned last September that time was running out to preserve the institutions. By February of this year, in the absence of action to remove the Irish Sea border, further steps were needed to bring matters to a head. The DUP acted to bring that focus of attention, as we said we would do before the election. The publication and progression of legislation in the House of Commons is a welcome recognition of the destructive impact of the protocol on political, constitutional and economic life in Northern Ireland. However, only with its passage undiminished can our institutions be freed from the dark shadow of the protocol. That point has not yet been reached, and we will want to assess the views of any future new Prime Minister before taking any further action. We are Democrats. We will appoint a Deputy First Minister when these issues are addressed. However, at the present time, such action would be premature. Less than 3 months ago, DUP MLAs received a clear mandate to resolve the problems created by the Northern Ireland Protocol. We are resolutely committed to this. The views of the Unionist community must be respected. This party made sure that responsible and operable arrangements were in place to allow routine decisions to continue in the absence of a First and Deputy First Minister or Speaker. Ministers are in place. Money is continuing to flow to key services like health, education and our roads. No, I've nearly finished. We will continue to be condition-led and not calendar-led. These conditions are not just stipulated by this party or by political unionism. They are contained in the Belfast and St Andrews agreements, enshrining the need for consensus and mutual respect between traditions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Patrick Brown.
Mr. Acting Speaker, I rise today in support of electing a Speaker. Indeed, as we have done on both previous occasions, Alliance will be supporting both nominations. Mr. Acting Speaker, I can't help but feel, despite these being my first comments in this chamber, a profound sense of déjà vu, that we are back here yet again with unguarded pessimism regarding any positive outcome from today's debate. Indeed, it's beginning to feel a bit like Groundhog Day, with the reclamations from across the chamber this afternoon, reflecting the limited progress that we have had since the May election, despite the overwhelming mandate given to us by the people of Northern Ireland to form an assembly and to set up a new executive. I, every day now, encounter situations in my own constituency where people are losing out as a result of there not being a government in Northern Ireland, and we can't go on like this. My preference is to get Stormont restored, and in Northern Ireland today we have 4 out of 5 political parties who have said, without preconditions, that we will form an executive. There is only one of the 5 parties, the DUP, who are refusing to go into government. And it is wrong in a democracy that one party, representing maybe 25% of the people, is able to veto the establishment of a government. That is not democracy, and it has to change. Mr. Acting Speaker, I have to confess, those last few sentences are not actually my words. They are, in fact, the words of DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, MP, on Question Time in March 2019. The only change that I made was swapping the words Sinn Féin for the DUP. Now I ask the party to my right, what has changed since March 2019? The DUP leader is of course right that any party holding a veto is undemocratic. That is why our party has outlined proposals to put an end to ransom politics, reform our institutions and deliver a functioning government for the people of Northern Ireland. And if the do-nothing DUP don't like that, they can voice their disagreement from the opposition benches. In terms of reform, we can start by reforming how we elect a Speaker. The current system, whereby 71% of members can vote in support of a Speaker, only to be met with DUP deadlock, is no longer tenable. We must move to a system allowing weighted majority voting, not just for the Speaker, but also for any executive veto and for use of petition of concern. And we must also reform how we appoint a First and Deputy First Minister, allowing any party unwilling to hold either of those positions to pass it on to the next largest party. That is why, if today's motion were to be debated, Alliance had tabled an amendment focusing on political reform, because until this place can operate in a mature and democratic fashion, our ability to deal with situations like the cost of living crisis will be curtailed. And it's not just a crisis, Mr. Acting Speaker, it is also a scandal. The term crisis is reflective of the impact of external macroeconomic factors, whether that be disrupted supply chains due to war, the pandemic or Brexit, loose monetary policy, energy insecurity. We are somewhat limited in what we can do as a devolved administration to address these causes of the crisis. The scandal, however, comes from our inability to make the strategic and financial decisions necessary to help those suffering as a result of the cost of living crisis. The blame for that scandal rests solely on the shoulders of the DUP. On previous occasion in this chamber, the DUP complained of how the protocol has increased prices in M&S. Well, my constituents are not concerned about the prices in M&S. Far too many of them are instead worried about relying on food banks, choosing between heating or eating. Real people suffering as a result of narrow and selfish politics. I urge my colleagues in the DUP to do the right thing today, elect a Speaker and allow us to get an Assembly up and running so that we can get to work and do what we were elected to do.
Call Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker, and thank you for taking the chair again today in these unusual circumstances. Mr. Acting Speaker, third time lucky, or not, as the case may be, because the DUP appear again to be set on blocking the outcome of the election from taking hold and a government being formed. Today, I'm proud to once again nominate Patsy McGloone, clearly and demonstrably the most able candidate and qualified candidate to be Speaker. Mr. Acting Speaker, 3 months ago we all sought election to this place. Why did we seek election? We sought election on the basis of putting in place policies to make the lives better of the people we serve. Today, the leader of the DUP, Jeffrey Donaldson, accused the Sdlp of stunt politics. His message was reinforced today by Mr. Kingston from North Belfast. There are three specific reasons why the Sdlp recalled the Assembly today, and I'm grateful that we had the support of others, Sinn Féin and the Alliance Party, for that recall. The DUP said that they were going to veto the operation of our institutions until they had progress on the protocol. They said that the protocol bill, which we object to, which a majority of the parties in this Assembly, and indeed it appears from all available evidence most people in Northern Ireland object to, has made its progress through the House of Commons. Jeffrey Donaldson told us that the party would take a graduated response to the passage of that bill. Well, it's passed the House of Commons now, I'm afraid to say. What now? How long do people in Northern Ireland have to wait? How long do they have to wait, struggling to put food on the table, struggling to afford the cost of school uniforms, and apprehensive about this winter? They said the protocol bill passage would lead to a graduated response. It's passed the Commons. What now? Explain to us. Are we to wait, as Mr. Kingston just said, for the verdict of Tory party members in order to get a government in Northern Ireland? A vote for the leader of the Conservative Party, in which I believe I'm right in saying less than 0.03% of the population of this place have a vote. What a preposterous position to be in. And Mr. Acting Speaker, the cost of living crisis has got worse since the last time we met. Inflation is now at nearly double digits. It's at 9.4% in the UK. We know that there are projections out there that it could be £500 a month in energy costs for families. £500 a month. This is unprecedented in the lifetimes of many people, not just in this chamber but across Northern Ireland. Are the DUP seriously saying that we don't need a government, that hundreds of millions of pounds can sit unspent at Stormont where people go without support while that cost of living crisis bites? I think that's frankly unconscionable. As the Education Minister, who apparently is going to cut teachers' pay if they go on strike, not willing to get back into government, spend money to help families with the cost of school uniforms? Is that seriously the position the DUP are taking? If it is, Mr Acting Speaker, it's frankly unconscionable. They talk about the protocol, and I've talked about the protocol bill. The protocol was no one's first choice in this chamber or anywhere in Northern Ireland, but it was necessary because of hard Brexit. Hard Brexit that the Tories pushed through with the support and cheerleading of the Democratic Unionist Party. I won't give way because your colleague didn't give way to me, and I need to make some progress. I'm afraid I have very little time in this chamber because your party won't allow us to sit and do our jobs. The protocol, according to NISR, a UK economic forecaster, is today one of the reasons why Northern Ireland is outperforming the rest of the UK economically. The Economy Minister shakes his head at me. He will know, because his officials are able to tell him, that the protocol is a benefit to our exporters rather than being a hindrance. Are there issues around? I won't give way. I will not give way to his party, because it's interesting that he wants to debate in this chamber. If he wants to debate properly, allow us to appoint a speaker and debate properly. Otherwise, he can make remarks after I'm finished. Mr Acting Speaker, it is a preposterous position to seek a vote from people and then for 3 months in the middle of the worst cost of living crisis in most people's lifetimes to sit on your hands while money goes unspent. It is unacceptable and it's unconscionable, and they don't have a good explanation for it. As the protocol bill passes through Parliament, which they said, they hinted, they implied, might lead us to at least appoint a speaker so that we could hold caretaker ministers like the Economy Minister, the Agriculture Minister and the Education Minister, who take decisions at the minute without any accountability, to hold them to account, but they aren't. 3 months on, you can have your opportunity to speak afterwards. 3 months on after the election, we, as the Sdlp and others, want to do our job. We are a constructive opposition that wants to get back to this place and do our job. Finally, DUP, will you do yours?
I call Jim Hollister.
Mr. Acting Speaker, there's a very straightforward reason why, after 3 months, the net product of this Assembly is nugatory, and indeed today is just another stunt sitting. And that very straightforward reason is the protocol, something that most in this House don't want to face up to. The very same people who yesterday and in recent days were effusive in respect of Lord David Trimble, consciously and deliberately ignore the very telling finding of Lord Trimble about the protocol, when he said that the protocol has ripped the heart out of the Belfast Agreement. And why is that? Well, the Belfast Agreement was proclaimed to be the establishment of an equilibrium between East-West and North-South. Then along comes a protocol which operates on the basis that Great Britain, because we remain in the single market of the EU, is to be regarded as a third or foreign country, and its goods coming here must be subject to customs and checks. That's what it means to drive a coach and horses through the Belfast Agreement. That is what it means to upset the north-south, east-west equilibrium. But there's too many in this House who don't want to face that reality, and don't want to face the political reality that because of that, because GB is now regarded in trading terms as a foreign country, that has constitutional implications which no unionist can come to terms with. No unionist. Which means that the very basis of our union has been corrupted by the protocol. And in consequence, no unionist can accept implementing that very protocol. Because the price of this Stormont now is to implement those checks, is to implement this protocol, And if this protocol, and it does, is wholly incompatible with our constitutional position as an integral part of the United Kingdom, then it follows that no unionist can be a party to that. The failure, the refusal, the stubborn refusal of those protocol fanatics in this House to face up to that is the reason we're in this position. Those who are playing with fire as far as the future of these institutions are concerned are those who are unbending in their support for the protocol. They are the ones who are putting in jeopardy these very institutions. And of course, they aspire to be members of a legislative assembly which wouldn't be able to legislate on many issues because of the protocol. There are people in this House who preen themselves about their anti-colonial credentials, be they Republicans or nationalists or crypto-nationalists. They all preen themselves about their anti-colonial credentials, and yet they are the new colonialists. They are the people who want to live under foreign rule, under foreign laws. They can't change and can't even rubber stamp. What an ultimate irony, and what a fundamental reason why no one, never mind being a self-respecting unionist, who's a self-respecting Democrat, can come to terms with a protocol that says, you're not good enough to make the laws that govern your own country. Your laws will be made in a foreign place. They will be handed down to you. They will be changed as a foreign place sees fit. You will have no say whatsoever on how you manufacture your goods, on the standards you manufacture them
Will the member bring his remarks to an end?
On how you trade them. And all of that is the product of the protocol. And that is what those who continue to howl at the moon about Brexit and continue to insist on the protocol, that is what they're seeking to put upon Northern Ireland. And that is the very reason why it is they who are putting in total jeopardy these institutions.
I call Chair.
Acting Speaker, I just want to raise a point that the fact in this House we're all supposed to, through the Code of Conduct, respect each other. Mr Allister has just tried to denigrate my party that are designated as others under the rules of the Good Friday Agreement by calling us another name. I would like a ruling from the Speaker's office as to whether or not members should respect each other's designations, whether they be unionist, nationalist or other, and use that accordingly when speaking.
I thank you for that. The member's position is on the record. Thank you. Colcherry Carroll.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. Once again, Acting Speaker, the DUP have shown themselves to be completely and utterly self-serving in their approach to politics here by their actions today. At a time when the cost of living crisis is driving people into destitution, their cynical phrase-mongering around the protocol simply does not wash. The reality is that they are wilfully ignoring the plight of the vast majority of people here who are struggling to keep their heads above water due to spiralling costs and political inaction. They have abdicated responsibility for tackling the current crisis and have done so to suit their own narrow political interests. While the DUP are refusing to do business in the Chamber, they are also refusing to do business elsewhere outside it. We only have to look at the sitting DUP Economy Minister Lyons, who has sat on his hands whilst energy companies have made record profits. He hasn't even opened his mouth. Just today, we see that oil giants BP and Shell profits between April and June of this year has outstripped the entire budget for the North for the year. These costs are being passed on to our constituents by the very companies that the Minister and his department are supposed to regulate and keep in check, but he has utterly failed to do so. That the Minister has refused to implement energy price caps and reductions is a scandal, but people are becoming increasingly aware the hardships they face are directly linked to the profiteering of a grotesque, ultra-rich minority. They will also be aware that the political establishment in this chamber has refused to lift a finger to challenge this. Worse still, Acting Speaker, the DUP has used its ministerial platforms to launch direct attacks on working-class people who have the temerity to fight for better wages. This week, the Education Minister disgracefully backed plans to cut the salaries of striking teachers who are taking action to defend their basic right to have a decent wage. Disgusting and straight out of the Tory playbook. But it must be said, Acting Speaker, the DUP are not alone in presiding over this approach to kick working-class people in the teeth. Previously, the Health Minister, endorsed by executive colleagues, decided to offer health workers a below-inflation pay offer. The Assembly may not be fully functioning, but ministers can still make important decisions. The problem is the ones they are making are not in the interest of ordinary working-class people. We also have a Sinn Féin Communities Minister who hasn't done nowhere near enough to get money into the pockets of those who need it most. A recent study by the University of York suggests that over half of UK households will be in fuel poverty by January 2023. I suspect it will be higher here. The effect this will have come winter will be catastrophic, but the Minister has shown no urgency to address this problem. We have an 11-year-old outdated fuel poverty strategy while people will be freezing in their homes this winter. This fact alone is a glaring indictment of the record of successive communities ministers. Mr Speaker, though it must be said that People Before Profit believe the DUP should end their boycott of the Assembly, we do not believe that the restoration of these institutions will be the silver bullet to the multitude of problems we currently face. As far back as December 2021, when we had a working executive, I submitted a call on parties to suspend the winter recess to deal with the cost of living crisis. That too was branded a stunt back then. Those same parties voted against our proposal to cut and freeze rents for private renters who are being increasingly squeezed by greedy landlords. Given the amount of landlords in this chamber, that might not come as a surprise. The cost of living crisis raged for months, and the Stormont executive simply looked on. The same politicians presided for a decade of austerity, reduced the pay of workers, implemented cuts to public services, introduced cruel welfare reform measures, and the list goes on and on. If these institutions ever return, then it will be up to ordinary people to pressure any incoming executive and government into action, because left to their own actions, they simply have not and will not work for the benefit of the majority of people here. In recent months, Acting Speaker, striking workers and the trade union movement more generally have led the fight back against employers who have attempted to suppress wages for their own greedy ends. I salute the brave decision of BT workers, Open Reach workers and postal workers who have all either took strike or are due to take strike over issues of pay and other issues. Similarly, the RMT rail workers are leading the fight for better wages, and despite propaganda against them, I believe they should be saluted and supported. Wealthy employers and their
to an end, so I wanted to take the opportunity to address some of the points that he has made about me personally. The member has never asked me for a meeting to discuss any of these issues, so can I offer him the opportunity to have a briefing from me and my officials so that he can understand a little bit about how the energy system in Northern Ireland actually works, because his comments have demonstrated that he doesn't have a clue.
Sir Carl, an extra minute.
Yeah, thank the Minister for his intervention and his kind offer of giving me an extra minute. I will be delighted to meet him as soon as possible. I have a list of ideas that I think you should be implementing and looking at implementing, and I think you should be saying something about the fact that BP and Shell are making record profits. Your silence is deafening. Saying something would be of benefit to people in our communities. So I advise you to say something. I'll take you up on your offer of a meeting. And also I would say, finally, Acting Speaker, wealthy employers and their allies in this Assembly, maybe including the Minister, need to hear loud and clear that workers will no longer stand for poverty wages and rotten profiteering. Striking workers deserve support.
The member's time is up. Thank you. Point of order.
The member for West Belfast has said on the record in this House something that is factually untrue, that the Minister of Education has backed a reduction in pay for teachers. I would ask you, Mr Acting Speaker, to require the member for West Belfast to retract that comment or produce evidence otherwise, because my understanding clearly is that this is entirely factually incorrect.
To read the Belfast Telegraph from yesterday. Look at the Assembly question that the Minister responded to. I'm still speaking. Look at the Assembly question that the Minister responded to, indicating her support for reducing the pay of striking workers. I refer the member to the article and the question, whatever one she desires to. Go ahead.
Order, Mr Acting Speaker. There isn't a response to a point of order from the member. I was asking the Mr Acting Speaker to make a ruling in relation to this. Mr Acting Speaker, the comment is factually untrue. To leave the comment on the record would be to mislead this House and to mislead the people of Northern Ireland. The Minister for Education has not backed any reduction in pay for teachers striking or otherwise.
I thank the members for their points of order, and their position is now on the record. Thank you. I call Declan Kearney.
It's a John Corlia, agus very much chance on the cold in a close in Astrahain Corona Glagna. Lelin na Jasperach de Jerry and Shaw, Hurma, the Aragus Alyanhu and DUP, Leshan Corhege Mergant de Shaw, Sheas Modamastia, Agnamiak, agus Palatio, a Yanthi. Agus a John Corlia is early Marata Kursi Alyeru Anish. The Bulskew a gol an arge, a gluas nach wakas, le brecious dihed blain, agus lioga, a wadnius massa la hacht. Sanama lahar, ta ibriha agus chowli ag fullinch, agus ag strakelch con eek as a gudge billy. Ta leidu de 3 punk sharp fwinged, erin man, huristal ibriha o vi baltanya. Agus te gach cumar in scale, go will an gear came costas marach talashaw, a gull idra cooliha at namiach. Tanis mo bruna hervashi publi, suganya, tushknach will bushed in wuniha foil dave. Hormayach hest contasach, holti and DUP and tam jeranach shan. And will she the rera, fui corange cook that lesh na party ha ella in St. Channel Shaw. Agus. And will she'd fear Hummonta, the cur a Greek co into Enya and Hiesta in a umlan. A charja, tafragriha na cash na shin anoctu anish the rare kela. Es leer de kach, gur commas a chuck, lesh in DUP, fui gra guinea. Jake Miohan, one in DUP and Bon, the Corlia Irecta, hui agus has. Shavy Johan, Haring and DUP and Uus, and feminist corancha cookta hien. Agus in visha hui hart, hep Ari and DUP frastal Corlia na Bratnia na Heron. She bonagus bar and scale a John Corlia, na kwal and DUP a wak le coranch cookta. Morawil and DUP a gull a ve whose kainiakta go hill agus go humlan. Agus is Marialer shin, go well and DUP agus a carja and Snatoriha ag Janu a Shach Nihil. Bon Clohana co into Enya and Hiesta a Scris. Nilian Winch B ag a Nyaward Political Shaw la Asiantus Erin Protocol. Agus Gacha Wanan la Kailunch Kuakta Chonacher and DUP Marfarchi. Damarode Gorowan DUP Fui Huram B. Bechart go mewe this on, nach will kill the layad lesh an curhig shaw. Ta chep holti and DUP and a vragracht dun fubble a gutchina. Nilan darna ray on anish, ag feminist nua a cur bon, agus frastal reactanishi ar bubble. Ta shinfian chomanta, Ebru son gach seranach, agus an cianarach a halahar a ta di. Johnny Majoli, the party ha ella a ta agiri sahi farasach a chrohu. Kebirod a harlohi sanama taronia. Ni more doinye a ta chomanda da froshesh na sheachana shasu le kela agus an fod a hiasu lias an fubble sni shekondi. Tabari akdama korha mau a John Corlia. Ni more jeru cur leis na leisgialta gan wanas agus na brega a ta ara. Ta sé an amanish John Corlia agus céad agus leas céad ara a ainmniú agus an tionol seo a chur arás a gobar. Is é sin atá daí ar muintir, hán a heilú clásaíocht nairach ón DUP. Gur maigad.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. The Alliance Party will support the nominations of both speakers today because we need the Assembly up and running urgently. When we talk about the difficulties that people are facing, it's easy to look at them in abstraction. But I wanted to share an account with you that I received from Action for Children, which really highlights why we need a speaker, but also why we need a speaker today. A family that they're supporting through their young carers service are living in private rented accommodation, and this family face a £230 shortfall each month for their rent, and they've been waiting 2.5 years for adapted housing. They rely on support from Action for Children and local churches to get by, but each month they are constantly worried about how they will cover rent, pay for food and fuel costs. These young carers are 13 and 15 years old. They cook the meals, clean, budget, and help their parent get dressed. They're experiencing high levels of anxiety, with one on medication for anxiety and depression. It's a single-parent household where the children help care for their parent, who has physical disabilities and is receiving treatment for cancer. They can no longer manage with all the increases in household bills, and their benefit entitlements do not match with the rise of cost of living. The lack of certainty for what is ahead is hurting families like this one in Northern Ireland. Action for Children's Crisis Support Service can only help so far. More food banks are not the solution. One-off payments are not the solution. What they need is an assembly. They need political certainty and an executive, a functioning executive, ready to work together towards long-term anti-poverty solutions. Mr. Acting Speaker, this is just one example of one family and what they're going through right now, and they're watching. 1 in 4 children live here in poverty. Most of these live in a household with at least one working parent. These children are watching as they grow up with little hope for the future. Their parents don't have access to affordable, flexible childcare, and as they struggle, they are watching women in particular with the burden of impossible choices. The health service is broken. The sick and their families are watching as they languish on ever-growing waiting lists, staff watching as they struggle to cope under pressure and underpaid. Our climate and nature is in crisis. Our young people are watching as we squander future generations' birthright. Our society labours under the weight of racism and sectarianism, and those who suffer discrimination are watching as they worry for their welfare every single day. And what are they watching? They're watching us, an assembly of elected representatives who were put here to do a job, people who can make a difference to issues that people are facing day and daily. And what did they get? They got an assembly paralysed by the DUP, who are prioritising party over people. I understand that there are issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol, Mr. Acting Speaker, and I do acknowledge that for some unionists this represents a very real threat to their identity, and I don't wish to downplay that. But setting aside the well-rehearsed points that this is a result of Brexit, and setting aside that the DUP championed Brexit, setting those things aside, the truth remains that any negotiation, any changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol can only be done between Westminster and the EU. It doesn't make any sense. The DUP may proclaim to be putting pressure on Westminster and pressure on the EU. What they are in fact doing is putting pressure on people, on that 13 and 15-year-old carers, the people that they're meant to represent. Mr. Acting Speaker, this Assembly cannot negotiate changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol. What we can do is legislate. We can legislate on community, on childcare, on climate. We stood for election to do a job. We need to be able to get on with the work. We also need to ensure that we're not put in this position again, ever again. Reform of the structures is now essential so we can not only break this deadlock, but so that no other party can ever put us in this position. If you don't want to do the work of government, don't stop the rest of us from doing so.
Thank you. I call Sinead McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Once more, this Assembly has been recalled so that the majority of us can attempt to do what we promised voters that we would do, which is to get back to work and to help people who are struggling. The Sdlp is here today to roll up our sleeves, nominate a Speaker and get on with the jobs that we were sent here to do. In putting forward my colleague Patson McGlone, we are nominating someone with a lifetime of political service to his community. The time has now come for this Assembly to elect him as Speaker and start delivering for people. Because the truth is, nobody can afford for us to wait any longer for us to do so. Since we last met here, the crisis faced by our people who have put us here in this chamber has only gotten worse. More families are struggling than before. Almost half the people that we represent now are struggling with fuel poverty. Inflation is now over 9% and it's rising. And it's a crisis that isn't affecting everyone equally. Low wages and high deprivation mean that people in my constituency are some of the worst affected. But something else has changed in the time that we met here. Since the last time we met here, the protocol bill has regrettably made its way through the House of Commons. So the DUP have run out of excuses when it comes to making this place work and electing a Speaker today. You have run out of road. Now, there are those who have had the nerve to accuse us of stunt politics by recalling this Assembly today to elect a Speaker. But to those people I say, what could be a bigger stunt than going through 6 weeks of an election campaign, coming into this chamber, signing up for your wages and walking out that door? That's a stunt, and the people of Northern Ireland knows that's a stunt. So I implore you, based on everything that you've heard from the members right across this House, to support our nomination for Speaker today. If you do not, I simply don't know how you can look your constituents in the eye. People who are choosing whether to heat their homes or put food on the table, parents who are struggling to afford their children's school uniforms, pensioners who will be sitting in freezing cold homes this winter, people languishing for years on waiting lists, on hospital waiting lists. And those people also in my constituency who have suffered the impact of devastating floods, who have seen their livelihoods destroyed and who need a government to be on their side, to make legislation that will support them into their futures. So I say to the DUP, if you really think that your protocol bill, getting its full passage through Parliament, should be your priority, then I would invite the MP for Lagan Valley to come to Derry, look at my constituents in the eye and tell that to those people who have lost a home, lost a business and lost their savings. Every single one of us should be putting our shoulders to the wheel and working the common ground to find solutions to the issues that face the people that we represent. That's our job. If the DUP continue to block democracy, then the people of the North will conclude that our commitment to this place is entirely hollow. Simply put, people won't buy it anymore. Instead, they will understand that you are abandoning people in their hour of need, leaving their fate to the whims of a Tory minister. Shame on you. Absolute shame on you. So in closing, I say to the DUP, on behalf of the people of Derry, every day that you refuse to support the nomination of a Speaker is another insult to the people you are supposed to serve. Get back into your office and let us all get back to work.
Thank you. I call Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I rise today to support the nomination of my friend and colleague Patsy McGlowan. I think there is no greater MLA in this Assembly that would fit that role well in an impartial fashion, and someone that can be also very approachable, and he has my full support. I do, however, find it very frustrating that even prior to today's debate, the leader of the DUP has already briefed that there will be no likelihood of an election of Speaker, nor will there be a time frame for the return of these institutions. That is a very depressing reflection of where this place is, particularly almost 25 years after the Good Friday Agreement, particularly on a day that we mark John Hume's 2nd anniversary, on a week that we buried Lord Trimble. Have the DUP learned nothing from the past? I think it's clear to say, be careful what you wish for, because the DUP championed Brexit, sold it to their own electorate as this great silver bullet that was going to transform this society and change life and offer opportunities and fund the NHS and every other possible imaginative dream that they could pipe up at that particular time. The protocol is a direct consequence of your Brexit. So stop trying to mislead the public. You put yourself in this hook, you're trying to get off it, and you're getting deeper and deeper into a hole. The problem here, folks, isn't any of us in this room. I've said it on every occasion that we've found ourselves in this position. The challenges of our society are much greater than the differences that we face in this room. Much greater. Each of us have constituents, and each of us serve them each and every day within our own offices. We try and resolve the problems that they bring to us, but those problems are worsening each and every day because many, many people cannot pay their rent. They're getting deeper into arrears. They're making decisions about heating or eating. There's people out there struggling with mental health that cannot get access to the support and services they need. Addiction services are largely non-existent and not there to support those who need them most. Those with drug addiction, with alcohol addiction, with severe problems that need that necessary support. Those are things that we can find solutions to. And what about workers right across the entirety of the North who are rising up, calling for greater pay and greater pay conditions in the face of a cost of living crisis that is spiralling out of control? And we hear from people in this House, but there's little we can do for it. Well, why did you stand election if you don't want to find solutions to the problems that our electorate face? Why? And ask yourselves that question. Because in this place that we call Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, or whatever people want to define it as, every single problem each of our constituents have in common to one degree or another. And we are tasked with solving those problems. But standing or not standing, or coming to this House or not coming to this House, was not something you were given a mandate for. We have overcome much more insurmountable problems than the one in which we face. And the reality is, as you well know, we have no control, Mr. Acting Speaker, over the negotiation of the protocol. But you have got your legislation. You have got it. What more do you want? How much more suffering is the DUP going to inflict on ordinary, decent, working people and vulnerable people in our society? Because that is what is happening. And, well, you know it. If we can go outside that door and we can have friendly handshakes and chats and talks about all of the various challenges our constituents face, why are you preventing the democratic right of the rest of the people in this House from echoing the concerns of our constituents here in the democratically elected chamber that we stand in? Why? If you really don't want to play a part in this, why are you in the executive not being held to account? The reality is you could elect a speaker, you could go on with business, and if the British government don't give you what you want, walk away. But you're punishing people, and this is going to get very, very bad coming into the face of the winter. And I hear the real leader of the DUP in the corner earlier pontificate about how outrageous and preposterous it is to be ruled under foreign rule. By God, it's only taken you 100 years. I have to say, Mr. Acting Speaker, the relationship with this place has been damaged and worsened as a consequence of the bad behaviour of the DUP, who are putting their own selfish political interests before that of ordinary, decent people in our society. We represent each and every single one of them collectively, but you have no mandate, you have no right to veto or right to represent our constituents, and it's high time.
Will the member bring his remarks to a conclusion?
You go back into government, that you let us do our jobs in this Assembly and put the interests of our people first, because this is going to get very, very difficult for a lot of families.
Thank you. I call Colin McGrath.
Very much, Mr. Acting Speaker, and I also rise to support the nomination of my colleague Patsy McGlone for the role of Speaker, one that he would take very seriously and provide great expertise to, and would be a great person to shepherd this House in the work that it does. And we meet today on the 2nd anniversary of the passing of John Hume, and in the week that we have buried David Trimble. And I wonder what those architects of the Good Friday Agreement, what they would think of the actions of the party opposite. Politics is supposed to be the art of the possible. It is supposed to be about a willingness to trust one another and to work together for the common good. And yet we have a society that is falling apart at the seams. We have all been told for a long time now, and we know what is coming down the tracks in terms of the cost of living emergency. And we know what we can do to mitigate against it and to try and provide support and help for families in their moment of need. We know that they are battling with rising food costs in an effort to put meals on the table, that they are trying to save money as we get towards the winter to be able to heat their homes and survive. That's what the people we represent are facing. It's an issue of survival, and we can do very, very little to mitigate against that or help them. This is affecting everybody in our community. Families who are working hard to provide for their loved ones, but whose wages simply are not stretching far enough. Now, we know that the protocol is an important matter. We know that Jeffrey Donaldson seems to think that we do not understand or appreciate that there is unionist frustration with it. But, Mr Acting Speaker, the protocol is here because of Brexit. The protocol is here because the DUP trusted a Tory government, that the DUP courted Boris Johnson, and that the DUP were supportive of his negotiated protocol as far back as October 2019. However, like many, many times in history, the DUP's downfall is that they just can't sell it. Mr Acting Speaker, I am the health spokesperson for the Sdlp, and our health service is in a dangerous state. I want to commend the work of fellow MLA Robin Swan, who has done good work in very difficult circumstances, but our health service needs reform. It needs major financial investment, but it also needs political investment so that we can reduce the waiting times, we can ensure appropriate diagnosis for people and try to save lives and help people to lead healthier lives. We currently have a forum of party representatives that meet occasionally to discuss the major health issues. But who's keeping the minutes? Who is it that's taking the decisions? Who is it that is following up on the decisions? Who is able to ask about the decisions? That minister might be able to do his work, but we cannot hold him to account to find out exactly what he is doing. And it is the same for each and every minister. They may be doing the work, but we can't hold them to account. Lord knows what they're doing. I'm sure we'll find out at some stage what some ministers have been up to, but we aren't able to ask questions in this chamber and hold them to account. But we know that that health service is in a perilous state, and it's been for some time. But it's the DUP that is preventing us from helping to sort it out today. The work is not being hindered by the professionals. It's not been hindered by the patients. It's not been hindered by the minister. It has been hindered by the DUP. They are the people that are preventing us from being able to adequately reform the health service. And you should be ashamed to look your constituents in the eye. Those constituents that are in need. Those constituents who deserve to have a few quid left over at the end of the month. Those that are potentially going to die because they can't get the right diagnosis or treatment. You should be ashamed to look at those constituents in the eye because you're causing the problems that they are facing and you are doing nothing to help them. And whilst you might shake your heads, that's the reality of your decisions. Mr Acting Speaker, I would say let the many thousands of our constituents of all sides have what they want. They want to see an assembly. They want to see an executive. They want to see us doing the job that we're being paid to do. And they want to see a resolution to the problems they face in their lives. That's why I want to see a Speaker elected today.
Since no other members have indicated that they wish to speak, I intend to put the question. The question is that Mr Mike Nesbitt be Speaker of this Assembly. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Clear the lobbies. The question will be put in 3 minutes. Thank you. Order, order. Members, please resume your seats. The question is that Mr. Mike Nesbitt be Speaker of this Assembly. All those in favour say aye, and contrary of any, no. Do we have tellers? Order, members. Tellers have been appointed as follows. Tellers for the ayes are Steve Aiken and Robbie Butler. Tellers for the no are Maurice Bradley and Keith Buchanan. Clear the lobbies. The Assembly will divide. Ayes to my right, noes to my left. Yeah, okay. Secure. Seats. Clerk, read the result, please.
39 members voted, of which 18 voted aye, 46.2%. No nationalists voted. 25 unionists voted, of which 4 voted aye, 16%. 14 others voted, of which 14 voted aye, 100%. 7 members who voted in both lobbies are not included in these results. The motion falls.
Fasten the doors, please. We move on then. The question is that Mr. Patsy McGlone be Speaker of this Assembly. All those in favour say aye, and contrary, no. Order, order. The House will divide. I have been advised by the party whips, in accordance with Standing Order 27(1)(ab), that there is agreement that we can dispense with the 3 minutes and move straight to the division. So when I call for tellers, do we have tellers? Order, members. Tailors have been appointed as follows. Tailors for the ayes are Colin McGrath and Mark Durkin, and tailors for the noes are Keith Buchanan and Maurice Broadley. Clear the lobbies. The Assembly will divide. Ayes to my right, noes to my left. Thank you. Secure the doors, please. Order. Members, please resume their seats. Clerk, read the result, please.
60 members voted, of which 39 voted aye, 65%. 25 nationalists voted, of which 25 voted aye, 100%. 21 unionists voted, of which none voted aye. 14 others voted, of which 14 voted aye, 100%. The motion falls.
I note both resolutions have fallen on nominations of speakers, Mr Acting Speaker, but I did note that DUP ministers on the front bench earlier on were quick, and some of their colleagues were quick to give explanations and defences about decisions they have or have not made in office. Can I ask that the Speaker's office consider what steps can be taken to offer MLAs in this chamber the opportunity to hold serving caretaker ministers to account for decisions that are being made? Because as we stand now, there is no further sitting day down on the order paper, therefore no opportunity for anybody to ask written Assembly questions. Could I ask the Speaker's office to look at that so that we have further detail on how Assembly members can hold caretaker ministers to account? It's clear that some of the caretaker ministers are happy to give answers when they're pressed. How do we press them?
Members, as Acting Speaker today, my responsibility is limited, as you'll understand, overseeing the election of a Speaker. Points of order in relation to any other matters should be raised, as you've said, directly with the Speaker through the Speaker's office. The Assembly has been unable to elect a Speaker today, and the Assembly has been unable, therefore, to conduct its first business. Therefore, we can proceed no further. Any further sittings of the Assembly can only be held to first elect a Speaker and Deputy Speakers. Under Section 39(2) of the Northern Ireland Act 1998, the current Speaker remains in office until a successor is elected. I therefore propose, by leave of the Assembly, to adjourn the sitting until a future date, the details of which will be communicated to members in due course. I thank you all for your attendance today and for your cooperation. The question is that the Assembly do now adjourn. The Assembly is adjourned. Thank you.